Hello and welcome to this introductory guide to your A2 OCR Media Studies exam unit. The title of this exam unit is Critical Perspectives in Media. It's a written exam and it's worth 50% of your final marks. So in this guide I'm going to talk you through three main areas. First of all, I'm going to talk you through what the unit involves, what the content is of the unit. Secondly, we'll talk about what you have to do in the exam. And thirdly, we'll think about how you prepare effectively, what you've got to do over the course of the year to make sure that when the exam comes in June, you're really confident and really prepared for what you've got to do. So what's the purpose of this unit? Well, according to the exam board, the purpose is that they're looking for you to show knowledge and understanding of three main things. One is media concepts, looking at aspects like genre, narrative, the key concepts that we've begun to develop an understanding of in Year 12. Secondly, you look at contexts. That's looking about the media in the real world. It's looking about the history of the media, it's thinking about the future of the media and how the media relates to the society in which it's in. And thirdly, it asks us to look at critical debates. This is where we might bring in some theory, we might think about the main media issues of the day. So let's think about your actual exam. What is it at the end of all this course that you're going to actually have to do? Well, the exam's in two sections. You've got Section A and Section B. Section A is quite unusual in that it asks you to reflect on and write about the practical production work that you've completed over the 2 years. So that's the production work that you've done at AS and also the production work that you've done in A2. So Section A is about describing and evaluating the development of your own personal practical skills. So the actual question that you have to answer is going to be asking you along the lines of describing the way that you have developed, that your skills have developed in 5 areas. And OCR are quite good in giving us and telling us exactly the sort of things you're going to be asked about, so there's no surprises in the exam. You're going to have to understand and be able to describe and evaluate your progress in these areas. One is your use of digital technology. So how have you improved, how have you developed, how have you changed the way you do things in that sense. Secondly, is about creativity. So you have to be prepared to write about your own creativity and how that's changed and developed and what you've learned through the course. Thirdly is research and planning of your practical productions. So you might look at, for example, the differences and the improvements that you made in your A2 work of research and planning compared to your AS work. Fourthly is post-production. So that's everything that happens after the filming process has been completed. It's the editing, sound editing, all that sort of work. And finally, they might ask you about how you've used conventions from real media texts. So in your own production work, how have you been influenced by the real media texts that you've looked at and that you've analysed? Okay, so what about the second question, question 1B? Actually, we're still in Section A here, but question 1B. This is a little bit different again. This asks you to choose one production that you've produced over the 2 years. So it could be an AS production, it could be an A2 production. It asks you to evaluate that production from the perspective of a media key concept. Right, so it'll ask you about one of these things. It might ask you about genre, about narrative, about representation, about audience, or about media language. You've got to have a really good understanding of those key concepts, and you've got to have reflected on your own work alongside that. So for example, if it asks you about representation, and you've made a film or something in AS or A2, which has particular representations in it, you've got to be able to apply that topic to your own work. So that brings us to Section B of the exam. At this point you're no longer writing about your own production work, but you're writing about a contemporary media issue. Okay, and you've obviously prepared a case study on 1 or 2 contemporary media issues, and you choose from 2 questions about each one. For this, you need to choose a relevant media issue, and I'll show you in a moment the options that you've got. You need to learn about it, research it, investigate it, and obviously we'll do a course to prepare you for this, and then show your understanding in the exam. An interesting feature of this part of it is that you have to have an understanding of a historical perspective on your issue, a contemporary perspective on your issue, and you have to show that you can think about the future. Perhaps that'll become clearer when I show you what the issues are. So if I show you one example in a bit more detail, let's say, and this is quite likely I think, that we look at media in the online age. The example will then provide us with 4 key questions that we need to understand, and these are the things that we'll be asked about in the exam. So you have to, this is the sort of framework for our study of this issue. I'm just going to step out of shot here. But with media in the online age, you will look at how online media have developed. You'll look at what the impact of the internet has been on media production. You'll look at consumer behaviour, so consumption, and how an audience response and how that's been transformed by online media in relation to the past. So how did audiences used to relate to media, and how has the internet and online stuff changed that? And you'll look in detail about convergence and to what extent convergence has transformed the media. There's loads of different ways of doing this. We'd really encourage you to follow your own interest to some extent. And so you might look at things like music downloading and distribution, the film industry, online television, online gaming. We'll obviously provide you with case studies and focused study in class, but then you'll be encouraged to go and follow your own interests as well. So in terms of the assessment and the exam, how much it's all worth, if we look at the graph here, it will show us that the first question, question 1A, you write for half an hour, you get 25% of the marks. That's about describing your progress and your development and your production skills. There's section 1B, question 1B, sorry, which is reflecting on one of your productions in the light of a media key concept. That's 25% as well. And then you've got 50%, which is the contemporary media issues question. And all of this together gives you 50% of your A2. So what can you be doing in the meantime, and what should you be doing all the time in order to prepare yourself? Well, it's really important that you show independence and initiative in working as a media student. Media studies isn't like some other subjects where the content is already set. Media studies is changing all the time, and what you've got to do is to keep up with recent developments in the media. 3 things we'd advise you to do in the meantime. One is listen to the Media Show podcast, which is available on the BBC website. You might not listen to every bit of it, and some bits of it will be much more interesting to you than others, but every week you should be looking at that, seeing what topics are covered, and going and listening to the little bits. It's half an hour in total. Secondly, we'd advise you to watch Click, which is on TV. It's also available on iPlayer, which is a kind of sort of small current affairs show based around what's going on with technology. It's really interesting. Thirdly, you should be reading the Media Guardian, read it online, for a really, really effective overview of recent developments in the media. So there we are, that's a sort of general overview of the exam unit. I'll also try and make a screencast which will show you the exam paper in a bit more detail, make that a little bit clearer. But then, there we go, that's what you're going to have to do. Really, our advice to you is just to make sure that you're independently engaged with your studies. Make sure that you're interested in what's going on in the media. The more that you put into it, the more interest that you show, the more reading that you do, the more you watch, and the more you think about the media, the more interesting your study is going to be. Okay? A2 Media Studies isn't something which can be delivered to you by your teachers and then we just spoon feed it to you and you go off and do it. It's up to you really to take responsibility and show the independence and initiative and interest that you need.